Every season brings its own set of pressure for players, coaches, the front office, and more. On today's episode, I want to talk about two specific people in the Chicago Bulls organization that may have the most pressure on top of them, and that is Zach LaVine and Billy Donovan. We're going to talk about that all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform that we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. And once today, I want to talk about pressure, right? Two people in this organization that I feel have the most pressure, specifically probably more from the fan base than anything else, because I think both these people and entities are going to be around the Chicago Bulls organization for a while, but that is Zach LaVine and head coach Billy Donovan. Now, they all are under their own pressure, I think for different reasons, but when you look at Zach LaVine, we'll start with the player in Zach LaVine, right? Zach is a player that has the moniker label around him of a player that cannot win games, right? And when you look at it over the course of his career, whether, and there were reasons for it, not having great teams around him, right? And things like that, not having the best coaching situations as well. But Zach LaVine, was a player that did not win 4 games in a row until DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, and them came over here, right? A player that did not make the playoffs, right? And, right or wrong, and I'm not saying that this is how I view, but right or wrong, people, especially when you are the highest paid player on the team, are going to look at the success or failure of the team and really look at that player and say, all right, this is your fault because of these reasons, right? And Zach LaVine, I think, after signing the max level contract that he did, the largest contract in Chicago Bulls history, now has a bit of pressure, some of it undue from the fan base and organization on how is Zach going to up his game, right? A lot of players, or fans, I should say, I speak to you guys in the comments all the time, look at the Bulls' inability to make it out the first round, and right or wrong, blame that on Zach LaVine. And I think Zach LaVine is coming into this season with a lot of pressure on him in the sense that you've been fully healthy now for the first offseason in a while, right? And, you have now a point guard in Javon Carter that theoretically is going to be able to bring a lot of what Pat Bev did. And there's going to be pressure on Zach LaVine to be more post-All-Star break Zach LaVine than pre-All-Star break Zach LaVine. And, even though Zach LaVine pre-All-Star break wasn't terrible, even though some people will have you believe that via just their comments on when it comes to Zach. But when you look at Zach LaVine and when it comes down to it, post-All-Star break, Zach was phenomenal. 27 points per game on 53% shooting from the field, 39% shooting from three-point range, right? And averaging, like I said, 27 points per game, 3.5 rebounds per game, 4.7 assists per game, almost a steal per game. Now, he was averaging a steal per game before the All-Star break as well, but when you look at that, he's averaging almost 3 points more per game than what he was pre-All-Star break. He's shooting it at 7% better post-All-Star break as well, and shooting the 3% better as well. So every measurable thing, Zach LaVine played much better post-All-Star break. And I think with that, it brings even more eyes on Zach on what he's going to be now with a fully healthy offseason, working with Dribble Too Much. We've seen the videos, things like that. Can Zach elevate his game? Now, the thing when it comes down to Zach is how do you look at elevation for Zach LaVine? Some people look at the scoring numbers and, they say that and want to see him go higher, right, which is understandable. Zach LaVine, a player who's always flirted with being a 50, 40, 90 player, which is an elite offensive efficiency mark for high-level scorers. Can he be that? Can he be that consistently, right? Then you look also at the limitations of Zach LaVine, how, he has the Zach special, as I call it, where he causes turnovers, the dribbling the ball off his foot, right? The lack of some basketball awareness sometimes in tight games in fourth quarter, the not hitting the big shots, right? Not stepping up defensively. Zach LaVine comes in, whether we realize it or not, and I do think that sometimes we can overstate and understate the pressure that a player is on, and I hope that the biggest pressure that's being placed on Zach LaVine is on himself, right? We've heard Zach say all the right things. And it comes down to Zach, saying that after he signed the contract, it made him want to up his game even more to show that he lived up to, that he earned that contract. And then, he started off last season with the injury. He had some mistakes in games and things like that. And that's going to happen with a player. But I think when you add in the fact that the Chicago Bulls have listened to calls for Zach LaVine, right? And that does play a part in it, right? Because they can go from listening to calls to making calls, and all that takes is a change of mindset on the direction that the front office wants to take this team. Now, I don't think that's likely. I've said that before, been very consistent in that. I'm not going to waver from that now. I do not see the Chicago Bulls moving off of Zach LaVine anytime soon. If the Bulls move off a player like Zach, I don't see that happening until, like I said, Lonzo Ball's contract comes off. They have all the first-round picks, and that's why I marked it even earlier this offseason. 2 years. I think that Zach LaVine has 2 more years until the Bulls really look to do something different, and even that would have to come via you bring somebody else in, a player makes a huge step or leap, something like that. But I do think that Zach LaVine is under pressure to show and prove this year. And that's pressure that every player should be under, right? To show and prove. How do you elevate your game, right? Zach LaVine in what's supposed to be his prime now. 28 years old is Zach LaVine. He turns 29 during this season. This is the time where we need to see and be able to bet on a consistent level of performance from Zach LaVine when he's healthy, right? And that's another thing that comes with it as well, right? Zach LaVine has, especially with Bulls fans that are more knee-jerky, have always brought up like Zach can't stay healthy, even though, before the first season with Lonzo, he hadn't had any issues with his knee since his initial ACL injury. And, even then, the surgery that he had is typical of a player that had a torn ACL. Eventually, they're going to end up having some issues there. Can Zach LaVine stay healthy, right? So when you look at the pressure on Zach LaVine, can he stay healthy? Can he up his game at times where we need it on the biggest stage and in the biggest matchups, right? Sometimes it has been DeMar. That is what DeMar has come here and been here for. When we need a stabilizing factor, that has been DeMar DeRozan. Can Zach LaVine step into more of those opportunities and up his game in that time? And then defensively, I've said it before as well. We've seen possessions, halves, and some full games where Zach LaVine gives that consistent effort defensively. And I really do think it just comes down to that. The off-the-ball awareness is one of Zach LaVine's biggest things, so I think it takes a level of focus, but I think that Zach has that ability not to be a shutdown or lockdown defender. No, I don't think he has that. If he had that, we would have seen it. But he does have the ability to be a disruptive defender and a consistent defender, and we need to see Zach LaVine do that as well moving into this upcoming season. And so Zach LaVine has his own pressures on him. And I think, it'd be remiss to act like he doesn't. But like I said, regardless of the pressures from fans, whether it's just or unjust or anything like that, I think the biggest thing that I hope for Zach LaVine this season is that he's putting the most pressure on himself, putting the most pressure to exceed, putting the most pressure to be a big reason of why the Chicago Bulls have the successes that they're bound to have at some points this season, right? Can Zach LaVine be a big reason for that? We saw it in the Toronto game, and I think that is always like a perfect version of Zach. Zach in that Toronto game gave so much, but then in the very next game against the Miami Heat, having his own troubles, right? So you want to see that kind of start evening out for Zach LaVine, especially in a 28, 29-year-old season, right? And let's see that, right? I know there are a lot of Bulls fans that, and again, I can't knock them at this point, that say the Bulls should really look to move Zach LaVine. And it really does come down to if they get offered a package that they have to move on. And so do I think that could come? There's a possibility for it. But I think ultimately when it comes down to it as well, is that it would take this front office to change directions of the team. And that's why I say, it's more so pressure to perform rather than I say it's pressure for him that he's going to not be here, but you just never know. And so I think Zach LaVine is carrying an amount of pressures coming into the season as well. But another one that I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to agree on too is Billy Donovan, right? And is Billy Donovan under a threat to be fired? You guys know, listen, I've followed the Bulls my whole life. Jerry Reinsdorf, I don't see him firing a coach with 2 years left on his deal and have to pay him and another coach, but he has done it before. I think we just stopped paying Boylan last year, right? So it is there has been precedent set for that. Now, I do think that the Chicago Bulls would have to so underperform for a Kane Eversley to move off of Billy Donovan, but I do think that when you look at it, right, at some point you can keep reconstructing the roster with bringing in new talent, new this, new that, new this, right? Billy Donovan, through his own words, has talked so much about why two things, right? Why having players that hold other players accountable is a reason. Him saying before, me and Pat talked about this over on Locked on Bulls how many times can you come to me and be like, oh, coach, my bad, I missed that, right? And so the level of accountability that I think Billy Donovan holds these players to. Now, he said that he also needs a player that's going to do that. Hopefully, Javon Carter, Torrey Craig, bringing in veterans do that, right? But also, he's talked about wanting to shoot more three-pointers and having Javon Carter, Torrey Craig come in, Patrick Williams, who was a good three-point shooter last season, hopefully Kobe White, who can be more post-All-Star break. The pressure, as long as the front office keeps doubling down on this roster, right, and keeps re-signing these guys, it puts more and more eyes on how the coach is going to get the best out of them. That does not in any way abstain the players from their own personal responsibility for their level of play. But I do think that Billy Donovan is in a situation as well where the pressure is going to start turning up on Billy. Doesn't mean that he could be fired by the end of the season. I think not, but I think that the pressure could start being such a thing that at least by the end of the season, by coming into next season, that it gets so tense in there to perform that at that point, Billy Donovan's job could be on the line, right? And so Billy is a coach that we know that his flaws. We know his benefits. We know his flaws. We kind of know who Billy Donovan is as a coach at this point, right? And it's going to be a coach that he's going to rely heavily on the star players. He's going to kind of allow them to do what they do. But we need to see better coaching as far as utilizing then the other players and the role players on this roster better, right? We lost that Miami game, and not just on Billy Donovan, but a large part on it because you couldn't ride the hot hand. Andre Drummond and Kobe White were cooking. They should have been in that game late. You took them out. The Chicago Bulls lost the game. And Billy Donovan has to own a piece of that failure, right? A large part of piece on that failure because you did not trust the hot hands that you had on that team. And we've seen that be a thing for Billy Donovan in his coaching and with this Bulls team so often and so consistently that you have to look at that for Billy Donovan. And so ultimately, I do think that, again, this is a season where the pressure is going to start turning up on Billy if the Bulls do outright fail in a large way yet again. But I don't necessarily think it's a year. Well, let me not say it's out of the realm of possibility, right? Because if the Bulls come out the gate and they are like 10 games below 500 by Christmas, which we know Bulls firing coaches on Christmas has always been a thing, right? I do think that maybe something could be looked at differently then, but I don't know if I see the Bulls struggling that much until where we get it to that point. But the pressure is going to start turning up on Billy Donovan sooner rather than later. And, I think especially when you look at the fact that we are only a couple of weeks away from training camp opening. Training camp opens on October 3rd. Media day is October 2nd. We are only a few weeks away from that. At that point, opening night is the 25th. We got preseason games between then. It starts, the season's starting to get real, right? And it's starting to get palpable, the fact that we are about to start getting Bulls basketball yet again. And I think that, this is a time where you start hearing things and rumblings through training camp, but this team overall also needs to feel the pressure. But, we'll see. Pressure on Patrick Williams as well. I don't want to overlook that. Maybe pressure on DeMar DeRozan in the contract year, right? Pressure on Kobe White. I will say this as well. Kobe White, who showed so much last season that he could be a player that learned how to contribute when his shot wasn't falling, but we need to see Kobe White continue to excel as well. There's a lot of things and pressures that are on players on this team, but I do think some of the most of it goes to head coach Billy Donovan and his Zach LaVine. But I want to hear from you guys down below. Who do you think are the players or people overall in this organization? You could think it's AK and Eversley that have the most pressure on them heading into the season. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. Make sure you're following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for our mailbag that goes down Saturdays and Sundays, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.